Hello again, everybody. Today we're going to be discussing the moral standing of abortion. So there's a lot of different questions we can ask here, a lot of different material we can discuss. So we're going to have to focus the discussion a little bit more than you might have to in, say, just a full-on ethics course. If you're interested in an ethics course, that's Philosophy 105 here at our college. But yeah, so let's get into what we're actually talking about this week. So the moral standing of abortion, we're basically going to be asking, is abortion in general permissible? Should we allow all stages of abortion? Right? Should we allow first trimester all the way up through right up until birth? Right? Or should we limit our moral access to abortion? Right? Should we limit cases of abortion only to those in the first trimester, or only in cases where the life of the mother is at stake, or only cases in which the pregnancy is a result of rape or incest? Right, there's so many different questions we can ask here. Now, for those of you who have ever thought about this problem before, you've probably noticed that in the media, a lot of the debate centers around whether or not the fetus is a person. Right? So a lot of science has been done to try and discover when the fetus becomes a person. Some people on the pro-life side will say the moment of conception is when this thing becomes a human person. That's an important distinction to make, right, between being a human and being a person. Right? So everybody, pro-life and pro-choice, says, okay, well, yeah, this is the beginning of a human. Right? Where they disagree is they say, well, it's not a person yet. There are certain characteristics a fetus must have before it becomes a person. Once it's a person, though, then sure, it has rights to life and all the other rights. We just disagree where to draw that distinction. Right? Pro-life people will say from the beginning, pro-choice will say somewhere in the middle of a pregnancy, normally after sentience is thought to be found in fetuses. Sentience is the ability to feel pleasure and pain. So many, even pro-choice people, think that at that moment a fetus is a person and can no longer be aborted. Right? So there's just this big, messy battleground of argument going on here. And our first philosopher for this unit that we're going to look at is named Judith Jarvis Thomson. And she wrote one of the sort of most famous papers in the abortion debate, which hopefully you've already read for this week. And she wants to say, look, that big, messy battlefield that we've been sort of slaying away at for years and years and years over whether or not the fetus is a person, we need to stop wasting our time with that. Right, let's change the debate. Not only have we made very little progress in the abortion debate by focusing on this question of whether or not the fetus is a person, it doesn't seem like we ever will make progress here, right? So it's two claims. We haven't made much progress so far, and it seems like we're not going to make much progress in the future. And she thinks this is because we're just too strongly focused on the wrong question. Right? So we're questioning whether or not the fetus is a person with a right to life. Thomson thinks, no, let's shift things and let's grant, for the sake of argument, the pro-life position. Right? Let's say the fetus is a person with a right to life. Let's just grant it right out the gate. Stop debating it, just assume it's true. Now let's see if we can figure out what to do from here. Right? Because the fetus could be a person with a right to life, but that doesn't mean abortion can never happen. Right? So Thomson wants to say, let's look at that right to life. Let's really inspect what it is to have a right to life. And let's see if that really rules out all abortions, some abortions, or no abortions. Okay, so how are we going to do this? Well, remember, we're assuming the fetus is a person with a right to life. Thomson asks us to imagine the following scenario, and we'll call this the violinist example. This is a very famous example, so some of you might have heard it before. One night, you're drugged and taken by the Symphony Lovers Association and hooked up to a famous violinist in order to circulate his blood through your kidneys. Right? So he has this poison in his bloodstream, his kidneys are failing, and the association chose you because you happen to be the only person who's a match for the violinist, the only person this process will work with. So you wake up and you see, right, that you're connected to this violinist. You have tubes running from one to the next. You see you're connected. And this doctor's in the room and he tells you he didn't set this up. He's just overwatching. He's just watching over everything now. And he says, the association, they already hooked you up. I'm sorry, I would have never allowed this had I known what was going on. But now that you are hooked up, if you were to unplug yourself from the violinist, you would surely kill him. The violinist would die almost immediately after you unplugged yourself. However, don't worry, you'll survive, right? You'll be back to normal eventually. It's only going to take 9 months. So you're plugged into this violinist for 9 months, but after that, the violinist is going to be healthy, you're going to be healthy, and you get to go back to your normal way of life. Now Thomson asks you, do you have a moral obligation to remain plugged in to the violinist? So pause here and think about that for a minute. Do you have a moral obligation? Are you required to remain plugged into the violinist? Or would it just be something nice of you to do, right? Would it be above and beyond the call of duty? Or is it actually what your duty is? That's the question you need to figure out here. So take a second to think about that. Okay, so hopefully you have some thoughts. Let's take a look real quick, though, at the two arguments. Right? So the classic pro-life argument goes something like the following. 1, the fetus is a person. 2, every person has a right to life. 3, the right to life outweighs a woman's right to her body autonomy. That's the ability to choose what she does with her body. Thus, we get to conclude that abortion is impermissible. We're not allowed to do it. But now, hopefully you see where this is going. The violinist case is very similar, right? So we can say the violinist is a person. Every person has a right to life. The right to life outweighs a person's right to body autonomy. Thus, unplugging from the violinist would be morally wrong. It would be impermissible. Now I take it, and this is very common, so if you're feeling this way, you're in the majority, that the conclusion of the violinist argument, right here, is not a good one, right? You disagree with it. You think, I'm guessing, that it would be okay for you to unplug yourself from the violinist. If you stayed plugged in, we could say, yeah, you're a really good person. You went above and beyond the call of duty to save this violinist. But we wouldn't say you're morally required to stay plugged in. We would say you're permitted to unplug yourself. So if you share that intuition, like most people do, then we have an issue, right? We've used the same reasoning in both of these arguments, yet we don't agree with the conclusion of the violinist argument. So Thomson's going to say, look, the reasoning is the same. They're morally the same in all of the relevant respects. So we should have the same feeling about both arguments. And if you think the conclusion of the violinist argument is wrong, then you should also think the conclusion of the classic pro-life argument is wrong. So you should think that abortion is actually permissible, at least in some cases. Right, we'll talk about how that changes in a little bit here. So yeah, here's just sort of a summary of what I was saying. The arguments and cases are the same in all morally relevant respects, but almost everyone disagrees with the conclusion of the violinist version. So Thomson claims if we're going to deny the conclusion of the violinist argument and think it's okay to unplug ourselves, then the same thing applies to the abortion argument. That's just following the logic, right? But you might be thinking, okay, well, this just was a case, the violinist case at least, was a case where we were taken against our will, right? So even if this example does show that some abortion is permissible, it only shows it's permissible in cases of pregnancy as a result of rape, right? So our initial violinist example looks a lot like a rape case, right? So you might say, yeah, sure, I agree. Abortion should be permissible for the reasons the violinist example shows, but that's only in cases where the pregnancy is a result of a rape. Thomson thinks, okay, yeah, that's fine, but we can change the violinist version, change the violinist argument a little bit and show that abortion should be permissible in other cases as well. So here's a slight variation of the argument, which I think proves that abortion is also permissible in cases where the pregnancy is a threat to the mother's life or long-term health. So imagine your same scenario with the violinist, right? The violinist is sick. You're the only match. If he doesn't plug into you, he's going to die. But this time you aren't taken against your will. You actually volunteer for the program, right? So you volunteer to plug yourself into the violinist to attempt to save the violinist's life. The doctor told you up front he doesn't foresee any side effects. And once again, after 9 months, you're going to be healthy, the violinist is going to be healthy, and everything gets to go back to normal. However, after a while, it's clear that something's going wrong here. Okay? Your health is declining, and the doctor claims that you're going to die or at least be forever impaired if you don't unplug from the violinist. Right? So unplugging is the only way to save your own life. Once again, it seems like, and this is very common, so if you disagree with this, you need to give us some explanation as to why. Most people agree that we would be morally permitted to unplug in this case as well. Right? We're not required to sacrifice our life in order to save the violinist. So if that's true, this seems to be analogous to a case of pregnancy where it's a threat to the mother's life and health. Right? So we should also believe that abortion is permissible when it's to save the life of the mother. So the violinist can get us those two things, right? Can get us permissibility in cases of rape, permissibility in cases where the mother's health is at stake. Now, hopefully you're starting to see your major point, right? We're looking at this right to life, and we're noticing that the right to life doesn't guarantee you the right to anything you need to secure your life, right? So, sure, the baby, or the fetus, in both of these types of cases, does have a right to life, certainly. But that doesn't guarantee the fetus a right to the mother's body. It doesn't guarantee the fetus any resources or any actual thing it could possibly need to secure this life. There's got to be a limit to that. And so Thomson, at least with the violinist case, has pointed out, yeah, there is a limit in these types of cases where it's either affected by a rape or affecting the health of the mother. Right? So just as the same way we can see the violinist's right to life doesn't give him control over our body, sure, it would be generous for us to give him our body, but it's not morally required. He doesn't get a right to it. It's our choice still. So our right to autonomy can sometimes outweigh the right to life. And if you think that's true in the violinist cases, you should also think it's true in the two analogous abortion cases. Now, I know what you're thinking. What about all of the more controversial stuff, right? Not where it's due to rape or affecting the mother's health, but just where people have sex by choice voluntarily and then get pregnant. What about those cases? What does she have to say? Well, we'll see that in the next video, but I wanted to give you one final example here. Think about Beyonce's touch. So imagine you're very ill, you're in this hospital here in Arizona, and the doctor tells you she's found the cure for your illness. All you need to do to be cured is for Beyonce to rest her cool palm on your forehead, and you'll be cured. You have a right to life, right? You certainly have a right to life, but does that give you the right to Beyonce's body? If she refused to leave her work and fly to your rescue, could you morally demand that she come to your aid? Once again, it seems not. It seems like it would be really nice of Beyonce. It would be good of Beyonce to come and save you. But it seems like this choice is up to her and not you. Right? If you had a right to her body, the choice would not be up to her. It would be up to you. But in fact, it seems to be the other way around. It's not your choice in this scenario, it's hers. You don't suddenly get a right to her body just because it's necessary to protect your life. So this is just another example, like the violinist examples, to show that just because you have a right to life doesn't guarantee you whatever you need in order to keep that life going. All right, so we'll look at the more controversial abortion cases in the next video. Thank you, everyone.